All right, let's jump in. Today, we are dialing the clock way back to the Wild West days of the internet. I'm talking about the late 1990s. We're going to look at the chaotic, exciting, and frankly, often disastrous birth of e-commerce. This one line just perfectly sums up the dot-com frenzy. The optimism was just off the charts. You had investors, entrepreneurs, everyone really, convinced that the internet wasn't just a new gadget. They thought it was a whole new reality, with a totally new set of rules. All the old ways of doing business, obsolete. And that really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Did the internet actually break the fundamental laws of economics, or was something else going on entirely? We're going to unpack that. We'll look at the boom, the spectacular bust that came right after, and what was actually left standing in the wreckage. So let's really set the scene here. I want you to imagine a digital gold rush. Seriously, everyone was just racing to stake their claim on this brand new frontier called the World Wide Web. And when I say vast amounts of money, I mean it. This was the golden age of the internet startup. So many companies, a lot of them with little more than a slick website and a big idea, were promising unbelievable riches to anyone who got in on the ground floor. The hype was just unreal. Now, this gold rush was really happening on two main fronts. First, you had B2C, which is short for business to consumer. That's just companies trying to sell stuff directly to people like you and me. And then there was B2B, or business to business, where companies were using the internet to buy and sell from each other. But here's the reality check. For all that money, for all that hype, the huge majority of those dot-com darlings just went bust. Poof. They vanished, leaving behind a bunch of digital ghost towns. So that begs the question, what separated the winners from all the losers? To really get what happened, that massive boom and that spectacular bust, we first have to look at the big debate of the time. It was this idea of the new economy versus the old. Back then, people saw the world in these really simple black and white terms. On one side, you had the old economy. These were your traditional companies with actual physical brick-and-mortar stores. And on the other side, the new economy, the young, disruptive, online-only dot-coms that were supposedly going to make all those old guys irrelevant. Okay, let's dig into the side of e-commerce that we're all pretty familiar with today. B2C. This is all about businesses trying to sell things to us, the consumers, online. And the ambition here was just limitless. This was the birth of what they called e-tailing, and the big idea was that literally anything you could buy in a physical store, you should be able to buy online. Your groceries, a new pair of shoes, pet food, all of it was meant to be just a click away. So, what actually ended up working? Well, when all the dust finally settled, two main models had survived the chaos. First, you had the pure play companies, think Amazon. They were exclusively online, no physical stores. But then you also had what they called click and mortar businesses. These were traditional retailers, like the supermarket chain Tesco, who figured out how to combine their physical stores with a new, successful online shop. And this brings us to a really crucial concept, e-fulfillment. This is basically the whole backstage operation. It's the warehouses, the packing, the shipping, everything it takes to get an online order from a website to a customer's front door. Now, the click-and-mortar companies had a huge advantage here. Why? Because they already had warehouses, supply chains, and delivery trucks. They just had to adapt them for online orders, while the pure-play guys had to build that whole expensive system from scratch. All right, let's flip the coin over and look at the other side of e-commerce. It gets way less attention, but it's actually a much, much bigger market. We're talking about B2B, or how businesses use the internet to deal with other businesses. The key idea to understand here is something called e-procurement. And it's simpler than it sounds. It's just the process of a business buying all the supplies it needs, from raw materials to office chairs, over the internet. This was an absolute revolution for supply chains. It made everything faster, way more efficient, and a lot more transparent. So, these B2B deals usually happened on two main types of online platforms. On one hand, you had public exchanges. These were like open marketplaces where lots of different suppliers could all compete to win a contract from a retailer. But some big companies preferred private exchanges, where they would only deal with their own hand-picked suppliers. And why would they do that? Well, to keep their business needs a secret. If your competitors see what you're buying, they might figure out your strategy. A really cool innovation that came out of these public exchanges was the reverse auction. It's a fascinating model that kind of flips a normal auction on its head. Instead of buyers bidding the price up, you have suppliers bidding the price down to win the business. So a retailer posts when it needs, and all the suppliers compete to offer the lowest possible price. It's a super powerful way to drive down costs. And hey, just a quick point of clarity here. You're probably going to hear these B2B exchanges called a few different things: e-marketplaces, trading hubs, trading platforms. Don't let it throw you off. They all mean the same basic thing: an online marketplace for businesses. So after all that frenzy, after the massive boom and the equally massive bust, what are we actually left with? What is the true legacy of this totally wild period?
Okay, here's the ultimate takeaway from all this. That belief that the old laws of economics had been thrown out the window, it was wrong. Dead wrong. While the hype bubble did burst, and spectacularly, I might add, the core ideas underneath it, the successful, viable business models for B2C and B2B, they were incredibly powerful. They survived, they grew up, and they have fundamentally reshaped how every single one of us buys, sells, and does business today.
You know, the dot-com story is this classic lesson in hype versus real sustainable value. And it leaves us with a big question to think about. When we look at all the exciting, hyped-up tech trends happening right now, which ones are actually built on a solid foundation, and which ones are maybe, just maybe, waiting for their own bubble to burst? Definitely something to think about.